30-second stories. Solo por wobi.
This time on 30-second stories, a classic VW commercial from the 60s that could still be shown today. Find out how many licks it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop. A spot from Guinness that tells you that good things come to those who wait. Nike shows you how simple ideas can go really far. Telecom NZ will make you want to call your dad. And Skittles show you how to take care of a leak in a way that you'd never imagined. The good, the bad, and the ugly of the advertising world. Selling has always been about calling attention, moving the product, and tapping into desire to create need for new products. The 1960s were the golden days of advertising. TV spots were all that mattered. Jingles were part of everyday life, and there was something very magical going on. Advertising was a power to be reckoned. Commercials and advertisers were starting to shape history.
Have you ever wondered how the man who drives a snowplow drives to the snowplow? This one drives a Volkswagen. So you can stop wondering.
In the 1960s, Bill Bernbach was the man, and the snowplow commercial was the gold medal winner in Cannes the year it ran. It is one of the most remembered and talked about commercials in the history of advertising.
Snowplow from Volkswagen goes way, way back in history. And I think it was voted the greatest commercial of the 20th century here in the United States. A fantastic insight. How does the man who drives the snowplow get to the snowplow? He drives a Volkswagen.
It stands the test of time now. It's still entertaining to watch. And that's, for me, again, the big test of your work. Do you want to see it again and again and again? But just in terms of what a tough brief that must have been, selling this small, funny little car to a nation who were driving massive gas guzzlers, and a small, funny foreign car as well. Must have been one hell of a task. And it's such brave work. So not only is it great execution, but it's a brave strategy and brave work.
It's about communicating, it's about telling stories. It's about connecting brands to people and people to people. It's constantly challenging. It's constantly changing.
Bill Bernbach gets quoted a lot by an awful lot of people. And one of the quotes that's used is the thing of word of mouth being the best form of advertising. Work that people talk about, that you need to have work that gets people talking. When teams come up with ideas, sometimes they'll absolutely answer the brief, and that can be quite alluring, but is it something that people will then go on and talk about? Sometimes it isn't, so you've got to find the ones that are not just on brief and not just good, but that bit extra that gives, as Bob Scarpelli says, talk value.
One of the most brilliant insights, product insight and insight into human nature probably ever. It helped revolutionize the industry way back then. I've told our Volkswagen clients, put it on the air. I mean, that cars are 50 years old, what have you, but it'll be huge.
Advertising has taken many forms and used different tools and means of persuasion. Humor has been one of the most efficient ways of creating an idea that is well remembered and shared. Mr. Owl's Tootsie Pop commercial was one of those spots that you could watch over and over again without getting tired of it.
The weird part about this is that if you asked us what our favorite commercial was, we would both answer the same one, and it's slightly ridiculous that we would both pick this, but...
How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
Let's find out.
1, 2, 3. 3.
Mr. Cow.
Yes?
How many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
I don't know. I always end up biting. Ask Mr. Fox, for he's much cleverer than I.
Mr. Fox, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
Why don't you ask Mr. Turtle, for he's been around a lot longer than I. Me? I bite.
Mr. Turtle, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
I never made it without biting. Ask Mr. Owl, for he is the wisest of us all.
Mr. Owl, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
A good question. Let's find out. 1, 2, 3. 3.
If there's anything I can't stand, it's a smart owl.
How many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop? The world may never know.
Back in the late 70s, there was a Tootsie Pop commercial.
Where a small child walks up to a tree and asks an owl, Mr. Owl, how many licks would it take to get to the center of my Tootsie Pop? And he essentially takes
it from him and he says,
like,
let's find out. 1, 2, 3. And then he crunches it and he hands him back the empty stick. 3.
When I was a kid, I remember that I liked watching the commercials more than the television shows. And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting.
It's been 30 years, and like the commercial's airing again now, and it's got such an amazing resonance with, like, even my kids today. Most people remember this commercial, and it's become part of the pop culture language.
I've always liked it. I've always liked really funny ads, and I love the characters. Advertising was always a different form of entertainment.
It's really a simple spot, really clean and beautifully designed, and gets right to the message, and funny and memorable.
It's all about the product, and you remember it, and it's about how the product tastes, and it's like the perfect product from the client's point of view, and it's the perfect client from the viewer's point of view, because they remember it. The return on the investment on that one commercial is astronomical.
I think successful campaigns, for me, are long-term. It's something that is so smart about what the brand is, that positions the brand so well that you continue to grow off of it.
Will we ever know how many licks it takes to the center of a Tootsie Pop? The world may never know. Up next, get your phone ready to call your dad and start thinking of how you want to write your future with Nike.
Ya volvemos con 30 Second Stories, solo por wobi. Estamos viendo 30 Second Stories, solo por wobi.
We've just seen 2 classic commercials from the golden age of advertising. Now we move forward in time to the year 2006, when Telecom NZ found a path to your heart and your wallet. Get your phone ready, you're bound to call someone.
New Zealand telecom spot. Every time I see it, it makes me almost weep. The idea that a father and a son kind of chronicles their life together at a beach house, and as the son grows up, you see different moments of them as the son's growing up, and then the last frame actually ends on the son alone, implying that the father had passed away. And the message that came up on screen was just keep in touch. Talked about the importance of staying in touch with your family and your relatives, and it just hit obviously a true insight, but also an emotional chord that really resonated.
Bill Bernbach said, an idea can turn to dust or magic depending on the talent that rubs against it. You start with an idea.
And the track that they used was a Cat Stevens track which he hadn't given permission to any advertisers before then to use any of his music. But what they had done, and this is Saatchi out of New Zealand, they sent him the finished film with his track incorporated in it, just to show him how perfect of a fit it was. And he was really hard to get in touch with, and for months they hadn't heard back from him. Until one day they got a fax back saying approved. To this day, I haven't found a more striking piece of creative, I think, than that.
So much today is based on the analytics, the numbers, the data, and I worry about how we're connecting with people. I think the best campaigns ever, the best ideas ever, relied on appeal to the heart, you know, an emotional appeal.
It's grounded in a real, true consumer insight, and that it's an insight that people resonate with and that they can relate to. That kernel of truth that consumers will find really motivating and interesting.
Some spots just touch you in a soft spot and make you feel all warm and fuzzy. Other inspirational ads empower you and have you plan for the future, like this next ad from Nike.
It's interesting. It's a very simple idea, but looking at the film and the storytelling and all the detail, it's fantastic. There is no right or wrong. I mean, we try to make it a science, but it's not a science. And the things that you think will never work sometimes are hugely successful, and the things you would bet the ranch on fail. I think subjectivity of like, well, I like it, well, I don't, you know, that makes it really hard.
To develop a successful campaign today, you really have to know your brand through and through. Understand its core values at the heart of the brand, and importantly, how those core values connect with the values of its target consumer, but also tap into something that's compelling for the consumer.
I do love big films. I mean, I would say, you know, I tend to gravitate towards things that you can watch over and over again and discover a little more, really enjoy the film. And I think the life expectancy of a quick piece of comedy isn't as long.
When you start with an idea and you can tell a story off of that, a great campaign allows you to tell a story in any medium, because we're asking people to spend time with something that generally they'd much rather be doing something else.
The longer an idea can evolve and stay alive and be rewritten and shown in new ways, that's success to me.
How's the future looking for you? Up next, take a swim of patience with Guinness and find out how to get rid of a Skittles leak at home.
Ya volvemos con 30 Second Stories, solo por wobi. Un negocio que hace furor en China, la carrera de palomas, y un jubilado alemán que gana premios de más de 2 millones de euros.
It's a tense moment until the first pigeon arrives. I worked for this success or failure the whole week.
Tonet, una marca que es sinónimo de sillas de diseño.
It's all about feeling and applying the right tension to the wood.
Un diseñador que abre nuevos mercados.
We have to do that in a very targeted manner via 1 or 2 channels of distribution.
Y muchos casos más en The Business. Serie estreno, solo por wobi. Estamos viendo 30 Second Stories, solo por wobi.
Some ads become part of the culture, part of who we are. Others are just plain funny.
Oh yeah, you got yourself a Skittles leak.
Can you fix it?
Sure.
That's how you fix it?
That's how we fix it.
That's it.
Catch the rainbow. Taste the rainbow.
Skittles leak ad, the performance in that commercial, like the subtlety of every second of the commercial. I just love the way that spot was crafted, and I think they hit it out of the water and kind of set a new bar.
I think more and more for us, it's been knowing the brand and the product and knowing who they're trying to talk to. You can come up with great ideas for a brand, or you can think of things that make sense with technology or with a certain kind of person, but it's really finding that kind of overlap and then using that kind of insight to create the campaign. When it doesn't really mesh, the idea is great, but it's not the right place or not the right way, it misses.
I can remember when I first got into business, we would get 6 weeks to work on one TV spot. And now we get 6 days to do an entire integrated campaign across multi-channels. Maybe that's a reason we do ideas that live in the moment and seem quite provocative and exciting, but they kind of fizzle out. So I think we're kind of in that fireworks moment where it's like, ah! And then you're back in an empty sky.
The possibilities are out there, and technology is just changing the landscape so dramatically, and it's understanding how it works and how to manipulate it and how to make it better.
Our creatives are actually being held responsible for what they do. The results are measurable now. So 10 years ago, you sat in your office and back then you smoked a cigarette and you went and had a big lunch and you wrote a 30-second commercial that went to air. Now, what you do, you're responsible for, because if you make a video and it goes on to YouTube or what have you, and people are not liking it, you'll know about it. Yeah. So you constantly have to be in touch with the target audience, the people that you're talking to. It's a great time to be in our industry. There's no hiding behind creativity anymore,
There's the weird that works and the weird that doesn't. Fortunately, Skittles tends to run on the right route to alternative universes. On our final ad for today, we look at Guinness Swimmer, one of those spots that are ingenious, iconic, and endlessly enjoyable over time.
My brother's a hero. The champion. He went to the games. He came fourth. But to the village, he was first. Everybody loves him. He's the reason I own a bar. After all this time, they still want to see him swim. Every year we have a mad race. When he reaches the buoy, I start the clock. Not go against the pint. They expect. I'm getting older, he says. One day I'll lose, he says. Don't worry, I say. You'll never lose. It takes 119.5 seconds to pour the perfect pint. But the best time is kept when you don't want your watch too tight.
Guinness Swimmer. I love that ad. Jonathan Glazer shot it. I can't remember the agency who did it. But man, that was just there's so many. I mean, Honda Girl was just a really cool spot.
It takes 119.5 seconds to pour the perfect pint of Guinness Draft. So that's how long he's got to swim from a buoy far out in the bay, back to shore, and sprint to the bar.
For filmic pure quality, and I think that Guinness Swimmer spot is timeless for me. It swims against the clock, and it's just very simple.
The ad was shot in the remote Italian village of Monopoli and used local villagers for the crowd shots. It won the Creative Circle Gold 1999 for Best Editing.
I think the best campaigns understand that there is an actual person on the other end of your advertising, that everything you do should be about engaging someone's humanity. You can't just bring a conversation to somebody and tell them what to do. You can't sell a 99-cent hamburger. You have to start a conversation and ask people to join it. And it has to be thought-provoking, not thought-providing. And I think that the best campaigns know that that people have the ability to edit out their message.
You have to wait for the good stuff. It's good. It takes a lot of smart people to make stuff. We've always been about ideas. We just sort of adapt to what's the best way to tell the story for the time.
That's all for this time, but don't miss our next episode of 30-Second Stories, where we'll find more good, bad, and ugly examples of the advertising world.